So let us see the inflammatory spectrum first, starting with what all do we see in this inflammatory spectrum of disorders. So most commonly, the autoimmune ones consist of multiple sclerosis, tumefactive demyelinating lesions in the brain, which is commonly seen, neuromyelitis optica, ADEM, which is acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, and anti-MOG associated encephalomyelitis. So when we start with multiple sclerosis, here we have these T2 hyperintense lesion within the spinal cord, which are short segment in involvement. So they will not be involving more than length of two vertebral levels or vertebral body lengths. On transverse section, you will see that they can have any kind of pattern of involvement, but commonly it is in the dorsal part of the spinal cord. Commonly it is eccentric involvement. It is not always that the patient will have symptoms. 1/3 of patient may have symptoms of spinal involvement, while 2/3 may just be asymptomatic. So that is one thing. 1/3 of patients may have only isolated spinal multiple sclerosis without any finding in the brain. So it's not that if you don't see the lesions in the brain, that doesn't mean that it will not classify into multiple sclerosis. So 95% of people with multiple sclerosis have spinal cord lesion, whether they have spinal symptoms or not. So we know that when you have demyelination in the brain parenchyma, on your brain MRIs, you always screen spinal cord. Similarly, if you're just doing spinal cord imaging and if you see these lesions, always screen brain at least with one 3D FLAIR sequence so that you can make a confident diagnosis. So short segment involvement is the characteristic of multiple sclerosis. On axial sections, you see that there is eccentric involvement in cases of multiple sclerosis. However, it can be anywhere on the axial sections. So though uncommonly seen, but atypical features are also seen with multiple sclerosis. Later on, it can progress to spinal cord atrophy over a long period of time, and specifically it is seen with primary progressive form of multiple sclerosis. Now coming to NMO, neuromyelitis optica. So this is an autoimmune demyelinating disease. As we know, the other name to it is Divig's disease. It preferentially affects the optic nerve and the spinal cord, and greater affliction of the female more than males. So the triad, the routine, what we have learned is optic neuritis, longitudinally extensive myelitis, and positive NMO IgG. But everything has evolved a lot in this particular spectrum of disorders based on our understanding of the pathophysiology of disease. So this is a severe autoimmune inflammatory demyelinating disorder of the CNS. And the role of autoimmunity in the etiopathogenesis of NMO was established in 2004 after the discovery of aquaporin 4 IgG immunoglobulins. So as our understanding of the disease pathophysiology grew, we know how to classify, and also imaging wise now we know it better based on the pattern of involvement of various structures. So in this seropositive group, coexisting autoimmune disorders have been recognized, and now the term which is used is NMO spectrum disorder. So this is the new term NMOSD. So what is this aquaporin 4, which we always talk about whenever we talk about NMOs? So aquaporin 4 is the main aquaporin in the brain and is expressed in the highest density in perivascular and subpile astrocyte end feet. So that is the specific location for this area. And afterwards, we'll understand because of this particular involvement of these diseases, we have a pattern on imaging and also some symptoms like intractable hiccups, vomiting, nausea, etc. So this is just one graphic representation of the timeline over which the terms kept on changing. So earlier it was just NMO, NMO criterias, and then it was NMOSD, which was introduced. And finally, in 2015, the latest criteria were introduced as International Panel for NMO Disorders or diagnosis. So the diagnostic criteria for aquaporin P4 IgG positive cases are different. The ones which are IgG negative are different. So we need not kind of remember everything, but whenever you have a case pertaining to this particular spectrum, it will be a good practice if you could actually refer to these criteria and see and give your recommendations for what further has to be done in these cases. So if we see what are the MR criteria, so there are some core clinical criteria and there are some imaging criteria here. So if we see the core clinical criteria may be like optic neuritis, features of myelitis, hiccups, nausea, vomiting based on involvement of area post-trauma syndrome. But what are the MR features? So you have to have acute optic neuritis, which means that if you are suspecting this, you should always screen the optic nerves as well. So at least coronal star images should be obtained through the optic nerves. So in any kind of demyelination spectrum of disorder, even if the referring physician has asked for only brain or only spine, you should always talk to them and try to convince for a brain, at least spine screening and at least optic nerve screening, so that you have a complete picture of the disease and distribution. So brain MRI may show normal findings or non-specific findings, but optic nerves will show you T2 hyperintense signal, which may enhance after contrast. Acute myelitis may be seen as a presentation, lesions extending over 3 or more contiguous, so long segment involvement of the spinal cord, and spinal cord atrophy may also be seen. There will be involvement of dorsal medulla and periependymal brainstem lesions may also be seen in this condition. So this is what the distribution looks like. What we have seen, the distribution of the aquaporin P4. And because of that particular distribution, the lesions also have a specific pattern. So if you see on the sagittal image, very typical periependymal surface involvement. On axial, these kind of periependymal lateral ventricular surface involvement. Then this diencephalic region of the third ventricle, periaqueductal area, and then lesions in the optic chiasma. Also periependymal surface of the fourth ventricle and area post-trauma. These are some kind of typical appearance in this NMO-SD spectrum. Marble pattern, this kind of fluffy margins with arch bridge appearance, and in the spinal cord, bright spotty lesions with long spinal cord segment of involvement. Again, there are differences between aquaporin P4 IgG4 positive status and MOG antibody, which is MOG IgG positive status, where we have a different pattern of involvement in optic nerves, spinal cord, brain, as well as the way we get the enhancement. So in optic nerve involvement of your IgG4 aquaporin, there is bilateral long length involvement and posterior involvement is seen, which is usually chiasmatic. But in cases of anti-MOG antibodies, you have anterior involvement, severe disc swelling, and perineural enhancement. We will see a few examples as well. So as we discussed, there will be long segment of spinal cord abnormality. Those axial sections will show bright spotty lesions on T2, and patchy cloud-like enhancement is the typical pattern of enhancement in these cases of NMOSD. Periventricular confluent white matter involvement, periaqueductal gray matter involvement, dorsal pons, dorsal medulla. That is what the typical features look like. And also always screen the optic nerves. Next, coming to ADEM, which is another condition commonly involving the spinal cords. So acute disseminated encephalomyelitis. So this is an inflammatory demyelinating disorder, which is usually seen after viral infections or vaccination. You will have an acute presentation to subacute presentation. Usually these people or these kids, they come from emergency and you have to ask for some history of viral illness. Mostly they have some prodromal feature, some GI related viral infection or some other viral infection history is always there. These are typically monophasic, but there are literature evidence of biphasic involvement of EDEM as well. And many of these cases, for up to 50%, anti-MOG IgG test is positive. And there have been literature talking about them developing future spectrum of NMO-SD disorders. So as we discussed, there are different patterns of involvement of NMOSD and MOG antibodies. So this is the graphic representation of the same, the way optic nerves are involved. So chiasmatic involvement is more with NMO spectrum. And with anti-MOG, this is more like optic nerve involvement. And rest of it we have already discussed. Moving ahead with the details of ADEM. So as most commonly seen, we have multifocal spinal cord lesions in the spinal cord in ADEM. plus additional brain lesion. Asymmetric lesions are more common than symmetric lesion in the brain parenchyma. As always mentioned, screen the craniospinal axis. Don't leave just with spinal cord or brain images. This is how typical ADEM look like, and most common setting in your emergency referral, one of the most common diagnoses is ADEM with proper clinical history and imaging feature. So what is the difference between ADEM and MS? ADEM usually have prodromal phase. MS, they don't have it. ADEM will be associated with altered sensorium, as I mentioned. Then you commonly see meningismus, which is not seen with MS. Bilateral optic neuritis is commonly seen with ADEM. However, it is most commonly unilateral with MS. You can have complete transverse myelitis. You can have seizures, ataxia. So it is quite symptomatic and monophasic. However, multiple sclerosis may be not so much symptomatic, but definitely relapsing, waxing, waning is what we actually understand from the pathophysiology of multiple sclerosis. Coming next to transverse myelitis. So we saw multiple sclerosis, NMO spectrum, ADEM, and now coming to transverse myelitis. So these are focal inflammatory disorders of the spinal cord, resulting in motor, sensory, and autonomic dysfunction. So you will have a clinical point or clinical picture where they'll give you a level of the spinal cord involvement, that the symptom is from D10 levels, the symptom is from D4 level. Some clinical inputs will be there where they have a straight, clear level of spinal cord involvement clinically. So that is why the name transverse myelitis, though on imaging, the involvement will be diffuse long segment. So what are the imaging criteria? More than 2/3 of the cross-sectional area has to be involved. There has to be focal edematous enlargement of the spinal cord and T2 hyperintense lesions, which may or may not enhance. So how do we see two types of transverse myelitis are there? So one is your acute partial transverse myelitis. Other is acute complete transverse myelitis. So lesion, if they are extending more than 2 segment, it is complete. If it is less than 2 segment, that is partial. Initial MR abnormalities are usually extensive, but 1/3 of cases may just completely resolve. 1/3 they have severe disability, and 1/3 can have moderate degree of permanent disability. So there are defined inclusion and exclusion criteria for for transverse myelitis, including, as we mentioned, clearly defined sensory levels clinically will be there. Plus, what is more important is development of sensory motor autonomic dysfunction due to spinal cord pathologies, bilateral signs and symptoms, and CSF pleocytosis may be seen. Exclusion criteria includes radiation to the spine, arterial distribution, and abnormal flow, because then that becomes a vascular malformation and dural AVF related pathology. So that is one thing in case of transverse myelitis. Other inflammatory lesions which can involve spinal cord are like this: nodular peripheral enhancing lesions, meningeal enhancement, and spinal cord T2 hyperintensity, as may be seen with sarcoid.